Hi, I'm Andy. Bet you won't press that button.
Hi, I'm Nick, and the only game worth coming back to is the game, which we all just lost.
Hi, I'm Josh, and if you ever wanted to make a second impression, talk to Amazon.
And this is Video Game Tango. Hey!
Hello.
Surprise, we're back.
We
Josh
are.
has got guns.
We don't have any
Bam! Muscles guns.
news for you today. We just have a bit of discussion. We're talking about it, and
Diatribe.
honestly, we were going to talk a little bit on Valheim. Ashlands is coming out. That's exciting. We look forward to playing it, but that's about as much as we have to say about it because that's as much as we know
Yeah, we can
about
tell you
Ashlands.
about games that are coming out, but you can look that up.
Yeah. So
Ashlands is exciting because we all have that.
Yeah.
We all have Valheim already, so we're definitely going to play that and can definitely give.
I mean, and all of
some
us already
feedback.
enjoy Valheim, so getting
it's-
more content,
exactly.
just a good time.
Just good.
So yeah, hey, Ashlands is out. Go check out the trailer. I'll have it put in the links dumps. I think it's gonna be a fun time. If you like Valheim, it's more Valheim, so I think it's gonna be a good time. Of course, it is still early access, and with early access comes with all the things that we've experienced so far. But as far as bugs and stuff, we haven't. I mean, Valheim has been fairly bug free in all of my experience. So.
No
Yeah.
terrible bugs.
No, yeah. And honestly, there's been times where I wasn't sure if I had encountered a bug or whether it was just a game. So, Ashlands is out. I was going to talk a little bit about WoW, but I think I'm going to save that for probably next week as I gather my thoughts because
I thought we weren't doing one next week.
That's right. We are not doing an episode
Never
next week.
mind.
Hey, so not next week, but the one after. Next week, I have to take the time off. I've got stuff going on. Too many
Spleens.
obligations. Yes, actually, my spleen is going to be looked at.
And 9 spleens.
So no, just too many doctor's appointments. I'm gonna get an IV and all that shit. It's just not gonna happen next week. So be prepared. We will not have an episode out for you next week. But the week after, which is going to be the 8th, I think, expect a live show. And then of course the podcast will come out on Friday.
V Rising update on May 8th.
Oh yes. Yes. So we probably won't be ready for it on the 8th, but probably the following week. But yeah, so I do plan on talking about World of Warcraft because the War Within alpha has gone out. There's no NDA on the alpha. It can't be streamed live, but there are some. I guess it's not an NDA, but it's an agreement amongst the broadcasters about what they can show, and that's limited by what they have available in the alpha right now. So so I have news on World of Warcraft that I want to talk about, especially in preparation of Josh joining me in World of Warcraft in the near future. So, but that'll be for another week. This week, I think we've all agreed upon is we were kind of pondering what would be we have this conversation now pretty much every week, what would be a good discussion to have. And this week we landed on kind of comeback. What games when should you revisit a game and why should you revisit a game? So tonight we're having a discussion about second chances.
First off, don't call it a comeback. Been here the whole time. No, sorry.
Okay, Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
No, with especially the one that really kind of spawned the idea was Fallout 76 with Bethesda smugly tweeting 1 million players today.
Yeah. Which is big.
I mean, it's huge. It's huge. Good, excellent for them.
Over 1 million new players.
Dope. That's amazing. However, if Fallout the TV show had come out in 2018, would there be an excitement over the game? Because the biggest thing about Fallout 76 was the incredibly small player base trying to destroy the game with nuclear weapons, vis-a-vis Fallout.
It's interesting to note, sorry to interrupt real quick. Steam charts lists Fallout 76 as having launched at around 33,000 players, quickly dropping within a few months to its average of about 10,000. And now 4 years later, it has 73,000 people playing it as of this month. That is double the opening day number of players.
And that's just on Steam. You have to imagine Game Pass and on the PlayStation and the Xbox, and again, Game Pass on PC. You're probably looking at double those numbers, right? Or at least 50% more.
Apparently 1 million.
Now, Fallout 76 is an interesting one because the kind of the feeling from the gaming audience as a whole was generally negative toward Fallout 76 because what people were expecting was Fallout 5, right?
Right.
They were expecting to get more of the same, right? Maybe a new area and new content, of course, but they were expecting like the numerical value to go up to the 5th version of Fallout. But instead what they got was Fallout 76, which was kind of an MMO, definitely more multiplayer driven. I say kind of an MMO in that like you're not going to be seeing thousands of players as you would a typical MMO. So it's like a phased instance kind of massively multiplayer online RPG. But that changed the formula, and Fallout players weren't particularly happy that was happening. So what ended up being really anticipated, which was Fallout 5, ended up being kind of a lame duck at launch, just simply because it wasn't what people expected, and it really wasn't at the time what people wanted. So it's interesting because, a lot of the other games that I think we're going to be discussing didn't have that same reaction. No Man's Sky being one of the most anticipated games of its era. We all kind of know the story as far as that goes. It launched to lots of copies sold, but a really unhappy audience, right? So, and then, eventually it came back to be the game that we know it is now.
I think it might be helpful to define some categories here in some terms. So I've been thinking about it. I think you can kind of split the games we're going to be talking about into 3 groups. We have failure of greed, failure of intent, and a failure of execution.
Yeah.
Failure of greed implies those games where so much effort was put into extracting as much capital out of their players as possible that it was to the detriment of the game itself. Think Fallout 4 or Diablo 4, excuse me.
Yeah.
Failure of intent is stuff like Fallout 76, where Todd Howard, much in like a Peter Molyneux of Fable acclaim, attempted to do something radical. Like Fallout 76, he initially didn't want any NPCs in the game. He wanted every person to be a real person, to prime the game for a very immersive experience where you're all members of Fallout, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that barrier there. And that failed, right? Along with other things. And then you have a failure of execution like No Man's Sky, where they shot for the stars every 19 quintillion procedurally generated one of them and couldn't follow through with the game, right?
Yeah.
So each of these kind of developed in their own ways, but I think those are some good frameworks to view these through. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, 100%. And I think you can find good examples of each one. Like you listed one for each category. I think Diablo 4 is an excellent example of, profit seeking that failed. Whereas previously, Diablo 3 was a failure of execution, right?
It was a failure of execution and greed. I think those do intersect. Yeah. The real money auction house was the sticking point for a lot of it. I mean, obviously there was balance and end game issues.
Yeah.
But
then there was the original launch as well, like Error 3304 or whatever it was.
So for Diablo 3 specifically, it was a poor launch.
Yeah.
It was a lackluster kind of game, honestly, up until Reaper of Souls.
Yeah.
They stuck with it, and then Reaper of Souls, Now, my roommate, he played the shit out of Diablo 3 when it first came out and it was mid, hella mid. I played Diablo 3 when I got the Reaper of Souls edition, and then it totally, so for me, that was the original version of the game, and I had a fucking blast playing it, and it totally reinvigorated my roommate in playing it, and we had a couple of multiplayer games going where it was fun. It was good times.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good example at getting a second first impression, right? Because if I might not have come back for Reaper of Souls if I had played originally.
That's exactly what happened to me. Was I played originally, and I never came back for Reaper of Souls. Even though I knew it was like completely, like totally critically acclaimed, my first impression of Diablo 3 was tainted. Now, I have to be honest, I enjoyed Diablo 3 well enough. I didn't get a whole lot out of it. I completed the campaign once, and I was like, that was an experience, kind of mid experience. Especially in comparison to what obviously the easiest comparisons would be Diablo 2, fantastic across the board, and the original Diablo, one of my favorite games of all time, like way up there in top 5. So, for me, in my experience, and I think we're gonna have some shared experiences here, but I also think we'll have some divergent experiences as well, where maybe your initial playthrough of the game before it deserved to be looked back into may have left such a bad taste in your mouth that it really didn't get the second chance maybe it deserves. In this case, that is the case for me with Diablo 3. It just, I couldn't bring myself to come back. I had no want for more Diablo 3.
So I think in that same vein, I think sadly for me, it's Jedi Fallen Order. The game is an improvement on the first game. Like they took everything that I wanted improved, and they did. They improved it. There's a fast travel. There's more combos. I didn't have to start over when learning the thing. It ran so fucking poorly. I cannot play the game, even though it runs fine now. It runs fine now, 90% of the time.
Yeah.
I still can't play the game because it left such a bad impression on me of frustration that I just feel frustrated playing the game. So in an opposite view, right? To oppose what we're talking about here. But I think because we talked about No Man's Sky being a good one, like being good for longevity and having like stick-to-itiveness and repairing over time. I think another excellent one that we can't go without saying is, of course, Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk was one of the most waited for, anticipated games. And while, I don't know, it was, for some people it still looked pretty and it still was okay, but the gameplay, it was broken. You could not play the game. And when something like that launches, that just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I didn't buy it for well over a year, right? And even then,
after all the hype,
and even then, marketing. The version I had was still janky, but it was fun enough. And I kind of put it down, and then what reinvigorated it for me, and they timed it well. And that's the thing. They timed an update or two well with it, and then Edge Runners came out.
Yeah,
and Edge Runners, just like Fallout, the Fallout show has done for 76. Now, admittedly, 76 did the work previous before the show came out. It seems 2020 was kind of the turning point year for it. They had 4 huge updates, including version 2.0, which seems to be the turning point for the game. Now it's getting the accolades that it deserves for that hard work now with the show releasing. So it's another example of like a show kind of getting people who had the bad press taste to try the game, maybe for the first time, and being like, I don't understand what people were talking about here. Why were they trying to destroy this with nuclear weapons? What? Same thing with Cyberpunk 76. If you played day one Cyberpunk 76 versus Liberty Fallen, the DLC, whatever that last Shades of Liberty or whatever the heck it was called, completely different game. You're missing out if you hadn't gone back and tried it, right? So Yeah, I think that's a good idea. There, it's like the stick-to-itiveness of these companies. I don't know.
Now, I want to ask you specifically because you looked into Fallout for for this discussion, Fallout 76. Do you know if any of the updates were or if they were free or if they were paid for?
I don't know. I know they added a lot of Creation Club. There is a bit of Creation Club stuff which you do have to pay for, but I think the updates were free. But I'm not 100% on that.
So, from a video I watched recently on it, you can play Fallout 76, and it's in a much better state than it was at launch. But they have this like yearly pass that you can buy that's like 40, 50, 60 bucks, which adds superlative shit.
Yeah.
Right. And it's there to get money out of you. So as far as I know, none of the actual like there's no like DLC content like this is the expansion pass of this year. It's just they have a big package you can buy.
Okay. I'm curious because, while we're having this discussion, I'm thinking about games that I have revisited after having, a bad first take. And the ones that I can think of that I've, been willing to come back to, or the ones that I think I'd be more willing to come back to, or ones that weren't gated behind a dollar amount. Like, I'm thinking back to Diablo 3. The reason I wouldn't buy Reaper of Souls is because I'd have to buy it, right? I was taking a chance in a game that I already didn't have a great impression of by spending more money on it versus something like Fallout 76, which makes a lot of sense. Like, if you already bought it and you're just going back to it to see, what's new and what's been fixed and, if they've turned the game around, that makes sense. And I think same thing with something like No Man's Sky. Before there was any DLC out, they were working hard at getting their game into a much better state than it launched in. Now, of course, No Man's Sky does come. There is DLC for No Man's Sky. There is paid DLC for it. But they fixed their game first, right? They prioritized making what they set out to do in the first place, after the fact, like after launch. So while it had a flop of a launch, people that have played it, since it's been, in effect remastered, say they had a really good experience, especially versus the launch experience. And I'm wondering if my hurdle in coming back to a game is a lot of the time it seems like there's like a DLC that makes it better. In the case of Diablo 3, it's Reaper of Souls, right? But because it's behind a paywall, I'm wondering if that's my main reason that I didn't come back to it because I'd have a hard time spending more money on it.
I think that leads into the whole point of this conversation for me, in that on the surface, okay, if a game's good, why not just go back and try it?
Yeah.
Especially if you already own it. Okay, well, maybe you don't already own it and you have to buy it. Now that's a hurdle you have to get over.
Yeah.
2, you have the same hurdle you have with any game, in that if you're playing this game, you're not playing something else.
Yeah.
Right. I think it is also important to split these down the middle between single player and multiplayer games. Something like No Man's Sky, originally essentially single player, Cyberpunk 2077 single player, but then stuff like Fallout 76 or Battlefront 2, which had this similar thing. If a single player game has been fixed over time, then you're going to get experience that it is not predicated on the current zeitgeist of the multiplayer. What I mean by that is, if you've played any multiplayer game at launch or in its heyday, Overwatch over here, World of Warcraft over there, whatever, there is a prime period of time to play a multiplayer game where it is at its height, and you get an experience you don't normally get to have with any other game.
Yeah.
And you can't ever go back to it.
Yeah.
Right. A game eventually is going to fall from that peak. When you have something like Fallout 76, it's kind of in the middle, because you can essentially play Fallout 76 single player or with your friends, and you can just choose not to interact with the multiplayer option. But I think the most important thing is, when you're considering time or especially money, is who is making these games. And this is what requires work on your part as a gamer, is to say, okay, well, I know that Diablo 4 wasn't great at launch. But then I hear this streamer or that YouTuber saying about how much they like it now. Well, you got to look into Blizzard's history of these kinds of things, or try to find an opinion that counters one you recently heard, so you can get some kind of a middle ground. You know, No Man's Sky has become a completely and utterly different game and is well deserving of the amount of effort, feel good games or happy games, whatever it was that made it put into it. But it's not a game for me, right?
Sure, yeah, totally.
And I had to, you know, really look into the game to see, okay, is this, even though it's so much better, is this something that I feel like it's worth my time playing? And a lot of it comes down to, if a game has a failure of intent, the designers like reach for the stars and were trying to do something crazy and it didn't work out, but now they're putting effort into the game, or the game sucked at launch because they just they had a due date and they crunched as hard as they could, but it just didn't work out. Those are the kinds of games that you should keep your eye on.
Yeah.
Games that failed hard at launch because they needed to push it out the window so they could get their microtransaction store working before everything else. Those aren't good, right? Those are the games that, you know, that if they're trying to fix their game, it's so that they can keep people coming back to the microtransactions. I think back to the original Final Fantasy XIV, where the game was not great.
Yeah.
And it was so bad to the point where they stopped selling copies of the game and they took it down and said, we're going to redo the whole thing. And we apologize, and we are not going to let anybody else buy it until we're happy with it.
Yeah.
That's a company that you can trust actually cares about the quality of their game and the experience of playing it, as opposed to, here's a new walled garden for you to spend time and money in. You know?
Yeah, they brought in Yoshida from that for that, just to like completely overhaul that. That was one of the, in this list here, it was one of the ones it's not slowing down. It's still
No,
running.
it's still growing.
It's still
My brother
growing,
and his
and
friends play it,
right?
and it is arguably like
king
the
of
best
MMOs.
MMO experience you can have. They've had so much to learn from previous MMOs, and they are fully gung-ho and just continuing to upgrade the game and add more content.
But honestly, even the idea of a second first impression on a game is kind of it's a modern idea, right? Like when we were like a teenager, you know, younger folk and kids these days, younger folk, Jesus, I'm sorry about that. Young people, that's worse, but larva, you have that chance. Like, if Donkey Kong had sucked when I bought it, like, that's just it. Like the cart, like, that's it. It sucks. Sorry, there's no update coming. You bought the cartridge. Hopefully the game you wanted next year for Christmas or your birthday is better. Because you're playing crap. Like, Donkey Kong was awesome, but if it sucked, I would have been stuck with a sucky Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
And
There was
it's like,
games that I got based off ads in a magazine,
Dude,
blue balls.
And that's all you had.
right?
Yeah, you had ads in a magazine or nothing at all. Like, sometimes you walked into a game store and you looked at cover art and you said, I want that
you
one.
got the front of the box and the back of the box is all of the review you got if you didn't have like a subscription to a magazine where they'd review games.
Well, if you were lucky, the only place that my parents could afford, and the only games that they could afford when I first started gaming, was NES games. Like, I had an SNES, but NES games were like, you could pick them up for $5 easy, right? And there was a little place over here right next to an old place that shut down a while ago called G.I. Joe's, but there was a game store right next to it, right? In that same shopping center. And it just so happened that every time we went into G.I. Joe's for Dad to renew his hunting license or for whatever, I got to go to the game store. But they didn't have covers on most of their games. Most of their games were sold cartridge without.
Just had the title.
Yeah, so fortunately, I made a Bandit most of the time. Like, I mean, I got so many good games on the NES from that place. But but that was all we had to go off of, right? So if you got a bad game, you got a bad game. But that's different. Games are almost like, how many games come out that aren't some kind of games as a service or live game, right? I mean, even the games that we really enjoy oftentimes are early access.
I was gonna say there's a day one patch when the game comes out. So even on the day of the first impression, they're trying to give you a second look at it. So I don't know. It's maybe second first impressions aren't as rare as we were thinking. Like, with all the updates and everything, but it is a very modern idea.
Yeah.
looking at it since 2013, Steam has had a huge amount of growth in the amount of games that are released per period of time.
Yeah.
Up to the point where they're now releasing roughly 40 to 60 games a day. We hit 12,000 games released in 2023. So keep that in mind that, okay, 50% of those probably aren't worth any money, right? And then you got to cut out another half for games that are just not your vibe. And then another half for games that are your vibe and might be worth money, but they're not up to snuff. It still gives you thousands of games that you can look through. So when you're looking, especially at AAA games that shit the bed at launch, and they've had a few years come back, like maybe you got a friend that is really interested in playing it. We are looking back at playing City of Heroes, one of the MMOs, because the original developers allowed a third party to officially run the game. And that was a big part of our teenage years. And it's free. So we don't have the cost to worry about. That's not a hurdle there. And two, they've been trying to add new content, which is great. But even just a stable play of like going back down memory lane, I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Me too.
And I would not do it if it was just me. Right?
Oh, for sure.
You know, especially because it's an MMO. But even a game that's had 10, 20 years to like fix itself, like it's got to compete with every other new game that's coming out. So I guess the moral of my argument, if there is an argument there, it's you got to put in the due diligence and work to make sure that the company that is revamping these games is doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
To make the gameplay experience what it should have been or even better, and not so they can keep the garden pruned for you to come spend money in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. And so that leads into like the modding community though as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if because there's some mods like I think of Paradox games come to mind right off the bat. Like Paradox when sells you a tuned down version, like they put it out, but when you buy a Paradox game, you know that game is not like what you're buying is the reassurance that you will spend more money on Paradox updates.
You're buying bones and you need flesh and muscle.
But all of a sudden, though, every once in a while, Paradox drops these things on sale, right? And so then you're picking up huge chunks of content update, especially like for me, again, getting a first impression of Stellaris, when I first played it, there was like 9 content updates. There was this huge mod list.
You jumped into it almost 10 years after it came out.
Right?
Yeah.
So I came in and I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. And Nick's like, and Nick is like, yes, it is now. And it's like, so again, it's the community that cares about it. It's nice to see. I don't know. It's nice. That's another way to get another fresh look at this. Because honestly, that's what I'm using right now on my Fallout 4 replay through, which I never thought I would do again, but here we go. Is like 9 mods that just give it a little quality of life update, and a new update that's coming. On the 25th. So that is in just a very short few hours.
And mods, really, it's important to just double down on talking about that. They completely, utterly change whether a game's good to come back to or not.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a firm believer that all of the recent Bethesda games, Skyrim and the new Fallouts, like this company would be in an entirely different realm if they didn't have modders. And it frustrates me to hell that they put so many hurdles in front of modders when modders are essentially, they are the detrivores of your garden, right? They are there to eat the crap that you let rot on the vine and then recreate a new experience. You know, you playing something like Stellaris or Crusader Kings, these Paradox games, stuff like RimWorld, the mods, like if you were going to go buy a car from a lot, it's like buying a frame of a car that has wheels. You're like, okay, well, this thing can definitely move in 2 directions. But then a year later, you got a fully fleshed out car. And 2 years later, that car can be a plane or a train.
Or a transformer.
A transformer, because mods be like, let's just take the base bones of this game and make something entirely new out of it. Why? because I'm a saint. I'm a modder.
Yeah.
I work for essentially free or donations, and there's like two of us, and we essentially remade this entire game into what we wanted it to be. You know, I think the concept of things like moddable games are really important to newer gamers to know that, okay, so let's say you buy the newest Marvel game or Call of Duty and you get 100 hours out of it. Like, that's a good number, right? We have thousands of hours in these moddable games.
Yeah.
You know, 100 hours might be one playthrough if you even get that far.
Yeah.
So we're talking a factors different as far as like bang for your buck. Like, I'm okay with Stellaris constantly coming out with $10, $20, $30 DLCs.
Yeah.
Because I have thousands of hours of the game. Like, it's still pennies on the dollar for hour of entertainment, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be the DayZ simp that I am if it weren't for fucking mods.
Yeah.
You know, the base game of DayZ is fun for what it is, but the experience that you get out of it is you can experience most of it. Now, of course, there's the community-driven experience, but, you know, if it were only official servers, which get hacked regularly or have hackers on them regularly, and it were only the you know, the base package without any mods, it doesn't take long before you can experience all of it. You know, that's not to put down any emergent gameplay that comes from it, because that is often what drives entertainment in DayZ. But you know,
you quickly see the core game loop for what it is.
100%. But there are so many damn mods for DayZ that, like, jumping into a community server with some mods available, you know, they have V++ servers that are just arena shooters. And I love those because I love the shooting mechanics of DayZ. They're fun. They have battle royale servers. Those are obviously everybody knows what a battle royale is at this point, and they do that. Of course, DayZ was the birth of the modern battle royale, but you know, they're bringing back battle royale servers in a big way. Like, there's multiple communities getting together to get these servers going and mod them to give you like an additional UI and UX that lays on top of DayZ, and not just, you know, a few extra guns modded in, etc. It's completely changing the game. You know, they're using a totally new map made by modders. They're using, you know, completely new texture sets in some places that are made by modders. So they've taken the guts of this game and rearranged them inside what is the framework of the original game and made something essentially completely new. Or at least different, you know, and that's where I find my fun. That's where I find that infinite playability in DayZ is every time I jump into a different community server, I'm getting a totally new experience from the last one.
One last thing I'd like to touch on the mention of mods and the idea of developers supporting mods. And I know it has its own vibe and its own like thing, but Fortnite is an example to look to for when a AAA company, or a AAA game, I should say, leans into mods.
Yeah.
I recently saw my roommate playing Guitar Hero in Fortnite, like with the track and everything and the people on stage, like their in-game engine editor for creating your own para games within Fortnite allows for you to play Guitar Hero at Fortnite. Like, that's bonkers. Like, how many games have in first-person party tools? We had Forge and Halo, and like how many amazing things came out of that.
Yeah.
Like, we had an entire era of YouTube that was built on the back of using Halo for not intended purposes.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to make this whole conversation.
You had a
about mods.
multi-million-dollar company that was
Yeah.
created off of the back of using Halo for a reason that it wasn't intended for, you know. But yeah, you're right. You know, mods can definitely bring you back. Going back to the kind of the core of the original discussion is outside of mods and community. What do you guys think could bring you back into a game that you didn't enjoy originally? Like, what personally for you guys tickles you into checking something out that you haven't played in a while?
I'll go first, I guess. I mean, a good TV show.
Sure.
I guess.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the obvious right out of the gate there.
Arcane,
Yeah,
Ghost
I mean,
Edge Runners. And,
Arcane was so good it almost got me to play it for the first time. Like that's how good it was. So a good TV show that'll kick it off. But honestly, I bought No Man's Sky. I read there's a lot of bad press. I mean, I didn't buy it for a while, but when the impression I got, I was like, this is fun. It wasn't quite fun enough to keep me involved in the game, but I would say dedication to it being improved. Like there's a reason I still haven't bought Last of Us for my PC. And there is a reason that I do have No Man's Sky, right? It's the dedication and it's the work and it's the effort that goes into it, that shows that you're trying to improve this thing that I want to play, that I want to give money to, or that I already gave money to. I think that's like the number one things there.
I kind of play games for 4 or 5 reasons. First one is to experience the world and vibes and setting and story that the authors created. Second is because I really enjoy the gameplay loop.
Yeah.
The third is to experience novelty, new ideas that are fun. And the fourth is to play games with my friends. Comfort games fit in there somewhere. There's some overlap. So if I see a game, and I see this less and less as games that sucked at launch and are now better, and more so games that are put into early access is like indie titles that you can tell their bones are great, but they're just a little itty bitty guy.
Yeah.
Like here they come, but like they waddling, right? Let's not get it twisted.
Oh,
so
Lord, they waddling.
They waddling. So you just watch them and you observe and you say, okay, at what point do I feel that my time and money is worth experiencing the product that's been put out? There's this weird argument that's been brewing in my head as to whether how much responsibility we have as a collective or maybe even individual gamers to put our time and money into games that might not deserve it yet. And this goes back mostly to multiplayer games, knowing that there is a multiplayer peak and it plateaus. In the way that corporations are run now, where if they do not see immediate returns on investments, they pull out investitures, right? If a game does not do well within the first like week or two, that sets the course, for the game's life cycle to eventually be sunset. Like it happens all the time. We see a lot of games coming out trying to be the next XYZ, and they don't do enough to be better than the evergreen game that's already out there.
Yeah.
And then they die off the vine. And some of these games are great. I would like to bring up, was it Gigantic? Is that the name of it? Humongous, gargantuan. There was a kind of a MOBA-esque game.
Supergiant?
No, it's just Gigantic.
Okay.
That I played way back in the day, 2017. And it really did a fun thing with the MOBA arena brawler concept.
Yeah.
And I liked it. And not enough people played it. And the company kind of is shit out and it stopped. And then out of the blue, they're like, hey, we're remaking this game. Took a lot of time and effort. We have to charge you for it now. It's no longer free. If you want to play it, it's $20. And everything I've read and watched, it's great. Like they managed to actually redo it even better than it was before. And it's not ever going to make Fortnite numbers, right?
Yeah.
It's not even going to get close to Dota because it is the same game in the same genre. But these are the kind of things that I love to see. Like this game specifically had a really novel game loop when it comes to MOBAs, and I like that. So when I go to experience something like you're talking about, this is something I've just been following. You know, every once in a while I just search it up, like how's the new Gigantic reboot coming, just to see, right? So
Not to get too tangential, but that's exciting for me because I was actually in the first alpha launch for Gigantic, and I have to be honest, I didn't care that much for the art style. I know that it has changed though, because I saw more recent screenshots of it versus the alpha, and it seems like they've kind of figured out their style. What I didn't like about it originally was that it felt like it was like a clash of styles. That said, I loved the gameplay, and I thought it had legs, and I was kind of sad to see the lack of hype for it. But I do think it came out at a bad time. If I remember right, that was coming out at around the same time as Overwatch as well.
In 2017, so
Overwatch has been out for a little bit, but yeah, and I'm glad to see that they're doing well or they're profitable. For me, to be honest, when I get a bad first impression of a game, it isn't often that I come back. In fact, I'm having a really hard time thinking of a game that I gave a second chance to after a bad first impression. And I am one that usually gives games a solid amount of time before I decide that I don't like them.
I'm the opposite.
Yeah, I very much give them the time. To be honest, I played all the way through Diablo 3, not particularly enjoying myself. I'll use that again as an example. Games that I purchase, I generally finish, or I get to a point where I get so frustrated with my lack of enjoyment that I stop playing them. But it takes a while. So for me, though, I think what has me coming back, I think the best example I have of that is early access games. Some games that I come back to, some of them I really enjoyed the gameplay loop to begin with, but what I like to see is a company that is willing to put out regular updates and is clearly working on a passion project, right? Like I enjoyed the shit out of the first time we booted up Satisfactory. I mean, I was addicted to that game for a solid 2 weeks. It was all I wanted to do. I go to work and all I do is think about Satisfactory. I'm literally crunching numbers while I'm at work to better increase our fucking throughput in Satisfactory. But I feel like we got a good experience out of it the first go around, and then we've come back to it a couple times since, and there have been some improvements. There have been some additions and stuff, but I think we keep coming back a little too early. What will have me come back to that is probably the 1.0 release. Like they just put out 0.8 like in November, and they switched to Unreal 5, so that's what changed their outlook as far as release date. But I like where they're going. They're super open with their development progress too. I really like to see something like developer logs on YouTube, like you get with Satisfactory. They will have a representative from the dev team talk at length about the changes they're making to the game, about the updates they're making to the game. Death Must Die, another one I enjoyed immensely, and then came back. I'm coming back.
You just released the second area.
Yeah, I'm coming back ASAP. As soon as I got some time, I'm gonna play some Death Must Die. So yeah, I can't think of too many games that I didn't like and then gave a second chance to be honest. So for me, I have to say that it's developers loving the things that what they're creating is what brings me back. It's why I'm coming back to Valheim too.
Yeah. How often do you just drop a game? You're like, nope, and then you just don't pick it up again.
A few times, at least a few times I've done that where I was like, you have made me so angry that I have uninstalled you and you will never be installed again.
I think a good metric, I mean, it's hard to judge, but it's better to look at what percentage of games you do that with. Because I think I play, usually if I had to average it, 5 new games a week. I am constantly trying games. And it is getting to the point where like I will be like mid-tutorial, kind of feeling it, and I'll be like mid-combo or reading through my inventory, and something happens, and before I know it, I literally just pressed Alt F4, and I'm just done. Like I can be like slightly engaged, and just something will happen, and just nope, I'm not worth my time. And the game could be great, but when you absorb as many games as I play, and it's not great for my overall experience because it means there's games that I'm not interested in that I probably should play. Like Adam keeps trying to get me to play Outer Worlds. And I just have a feeling that I'm not going to like it. But it's a fantastic game, and I know that. So
Outer Worlds or Outer Wilds?
Which is the good one?
Not
Outer Worlds was
Outer Wilds.
okay. It was
Outer Wilds.
Obsidian's take at doing like another Fallout.
Oh yeah, no, I did play that one,
Okay.
and I got about like 2 hours into it, and it was like,
Yeah.
nope.
Oh, you're like a third of the way through the game.
Yeah, no, it's true, dude. Yeah, I was when I laid that game down, and then I talked to Russ about it the next day. He was like, "Dude, you were like 75% of the way through that game." I'm like, "Are you
Outer
fucking
Worlds
kidding
was
me?"
the shitty one.
Yeah, I felt like I just got done with a tutorial island, and to learn that I was almost done with the game was gross.
And this is another thing, maybe another meta discussion we have. The game has a 9 out of 10 on Steam, 85% on Metacritic, 8.5 out of 10 on IGN.
Critically
Maybe
acclaimed.
We can talk about reviews. Maybe they're reviewing the Spacer's Choice Edition. Like maybe this is that case where the game came out and it is kind of garbage.
Yeah,
And then they released a couple of free updates and now it is a 9 out of 10.
that's possible. I mean, rarely do they ever leave up their original reviews when there's a revision made to a game. So
yeah.
that's entirely possible that maybe Outer Worlds is a fucking fantastic game now.
Outer Wilds is the one I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's an icon. It's an institution of gaming.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm too picky.
I'm pretty fucking picky when it comes to games too.
Yeah. 'cause you play like 2 games.
Well, that's not true. I try a lot of games. Like I play demos relatively obsessively.
Correction. There's 2 games you consistently play. Yeah.
There's more than that. I mean,
World,
for sure.
okay. World of Warcraft, Stardew Valley, and DayZ.
Thank you. You were missing one of those.
That's 50%. That's a big jump. Yeah.
Yeah, no, those games are definitely my mains. World of Warcraft was reintroduced more recently, and to be honest, I only play that when I don't have the ability to pay full attention at a game.
Yeah.
So you guys have watched me play because we're playing live on Tuesdays on Twitch, and we all get together. We play whatever we want to play. We talk about whatever we want to talk about, and I've been playing WoW because I'm running a ship. So it's
You got
something.
to get that leg of Lamnon or whatever the mount's called.
100%. So I jump into a game that I can play without thought, and run a stream instead. So that is why I choose that. I haven't really jumped back into it, and I don't plan to until Josh starts playing. That said, you're right. I do tend to mainline games like a motherfucker. World of Warcraft was my game for 15 years. And getting away from that love-hate cycle has been difficult. But World of Warcraft also did such a poor fucking job at delivering good content for so many years that eventually that divorce happened, and now we're amicable. Right. now we both have kids, and we're in our own separate relationships, and we all get along. So I'm not the WoW addict that I once was. So I do spend a lot of time playing other games. I do have a couple of mainstays that I enjoy too, and we kind of talked about comfort games. I guess you could call them comfort games for me in that, like, it doesn't take any thought for me to want to play them. Like, it's a quick decision. That said, I'm quite different than you in how much time I give games before I just drop them, because for me, I want to know, is this feature that I don't like is there some intentionality there? Is there something that I don't understand about this feature yet? So I want to give it time, right? To be like, okay, how does it fit? Why did the developers decide to go about this mechanic or this UI decision that I don't like? Is there some intentionality behind it that makes sense? And I find myself chasing that, and then eventually playing, long term. Like I said, I played all of Diablo 3, not particularly caring for my experience, and then I finished it. So yeah, I tend to give games a long shot, and that's like all of them.
Any last thoughts, Josh? No.
Nah.
He plays games.
Nah,
I play games.
I know exactly what Josh wants to do right now.
I play
So
video games.
we're gonna let Josh do that. I think that's it for this episode. Just a reminder for everybody, hey, if you haven't been to videogametango.com in a while, go there and check it out. There's stuff to do there. It's all fun and games. You can even watch this live stream from there. The Twitch channel, twitch.tv/videogametango, the YouTube, youtube.com/@videogametango, because they, ads are cool. Yeah, come check us out. That's where you can leave all the comments, voicemails, etc. Anyways, just wanted to give a quick reminder to you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
Appreciate you, every single one of you. We'll see you in a couple weeks.